All right, everybody, get ready, because today we are diving deep, deep into the world of Sandstorm Gold.
Ooh, exciting.
They're this fascinating streaming and royalty company. So basically, they fund mining projects right up front
Oh, I see.
in exchange for, well, a really good deal on the metals produced later on.
Shut up.
We've got a whole bunch of info on Sandstorm. We've got their November 2024 investor presentation, a summary document, and the transcript from their Q3 2024 earnings call.
Wow, we've got our work cut out for us.
We do. And you know what? Our mission is to see if what they're saying in the earnings call actually matches up with what's in that investor presentation.
Yeah, makes sense. Gonna make sure they're being consistent.
Exactly. And then we're going to really dig into what the CEO is arguing about Sandstorm's future.
Okay, so let's see if they're walking the walk.
You got it. Okay, so let's start with, the big thing everyone's talking about.
Yeah.
Gold prices.
Yeah, everyone's talking about gold.
They've been crazy high lately, right?
Through the roof.
But here's the thing, and this is kind of surprising. That's actually been, kind of a mixed bag for Sandstorm.
Really? How so?
Yeah, so get this. Sandstorm uses this thing called gold equivalent ounces to measure basically their total production.
Gold equivalent ounces?
Yeah, so they convert their copper and silver streams into a gold equivalent. And they use a fixed gold price to do it.
Right.
But with gold prices skyrocketing like they have been, those copper and silver streams, they're actually worth fewer gold equivalent ounces.
So even though the price of gold is up, their overall gold equivalent ounces are down. That seems counterintuitive.
It really does. It's like this weird accounting paradox. And the CEO actually talked about this in the earnings call. He said that if gold prices hadn't gone so crazy, their Q3 production would have been within 6% of what they budgeted for.
Interesting. So how do they explain that discrepancy?
Well, that's where it gets even more interesting.
Okay, I'm listening.
Because, see, that little detail, it actually shows us kind of a really smart strategy that Sandstorm's using.
Oh.
So their big growth projects, like the ones they're really putting their money on, those are all 100% gold streams.
Okay.
So these high gold prices, they actually won't even really matter for their gold equivalent ounce calculations once these projects are fully up and running.
So they're kind of insulated from the volatility in a way.
Exactly. Isn't that wild?
Yeah, I'm starting to see how this could actually be beneficial for them.
Right. It's like this dip in gold equivalent ounces, it might actually be a good sign.
A good sign. But how?
Well, their CEO, he's totally banking on this. He even said that once those big projects are online, over 85% of Sandstorm's production will be, just straight up precious metals.
So they're playing the long game.
They are. And you know what? He even mentioned in the investor presentation that they're happy to buy back shares.
Buy back shares? Why would they do that?
Because when investors see those lower gold equivalent ounces and get spooked, they sell, right?
Ah, I see. They're taking advantage of the market's short-sightedness.
Exactly. It's like they're playing chess while everyone else is playing checkers.
That's a pretty savvy move. So while everyone else is panicking, they're just sitting back, waiting for those gold streams to start flowing.
You got it. It's all part of the plan.
Well, color me impressed. They're thinking ahead.
They really are. But you know what? Let's talk about those development projects for a second.
Yeah, let's dive into that.
The CEO, he's really hyped about them, especially in that investor presentation. He spent so much time on Platte Reef, Mara, and Hod Maiden.
He's excited.
He is. It's almost like he was trying to, get investors drooling over how much potential there is.
Well, those projects are pretty important for Sandstorm's future.
Oh, they're huge.
Sure.
If those projects actually deliver on what he's saying,
Yeah.
Sandstorm's production could literally double in the next 5 years.
Wow, that's significant.
It is. They're absolutely crucial for the company.
I can see why he's so excited then.
Okay, so let's break them down one by one. First up, Platte Reef in South Africa.
Okay, Platte Reef.
What's the deal with this one?
Well, Platte Reef is already under construction, which is a good sign.
That's good.
And it's being run by, get this, Ivanhoe Mines?
Ivanhoe Mines.
Yeah, they're a big deal in the mining world.
Huge.
So we're talking about potentially 10,000 ounces of gold per year for Sandstorm, at least initially. And that could even ramp up to 15,000 or even 20,000 ounces later on.
Wow, that's impressive. Okay, so Platte Reef it's already happening.
It's in motion.
Yeah. Next up, Mara in Argentina. What's so special about this one?
Mara is a potential game changer. It could be their most valuable asset.
Really?
Yeah, and here's the kicker. Glencore just bought 100% of it.
Glencore. The Glencore.
Yep, the one and only.
That's like, wow. That's huge.
And they've said publicly that they plan to develop it, so that's a major vote of confidence.
It really is. And didn't we hear something about Argentina offering tax breaks to companies that get projects moving quickly?
You're right. Argentina wants things to move fast, so Mara could be fast-tracked.
Wow. So we've got Platte Reef going, Mara potentially on the fast track. And then, well, there's the wild card. Hodmeden in Turkey.
Ah, yes, Hodmeden. That one had some bumps in the road.
It has. Some delays, right? What's the latest?
There have been delays, yeah. But there are some hopeful signs.
Okay, I like hopeful signs.
The CEO mentioned that SSR Mining, the company developing Hodmeden, spent $10 million on it just in Q3.
$10 million? Wow.
That's a big jump in spending compared to, previous quarters.
It's got to mean something, right? Could that mean they're figuring things out?
It's definitely a positive sign, though we'll need more information to know for sure.
Okay. So one project underway, one that could be fast-tracked, and one showing signs of life.
Sounds like they've got a lot going on.
They do, but here's what I don't get. If these projects are as good as the CEO says they are, why is Sandstorm stock trading at a discount compared to its peers?
That's a good question. If they're on the verge of something big, why aren't investors more excited?
Right. Shouldn't everyone be trying to get a piece of this?
Well, the CEO actually addressed that directly in the investor presentation. He gave 4 main reasons.
4 reasons. Okay, I'm all ears. Let's hear it.
All right, so reason number 1 is what he called legacy debt perception.
Legacy debt perception.
Yeah, basically a couple years ago, Sandstorm took on a lot of debt to finance some acquisitions, and that kind of spooked some investors.
Makes sense. Debt can be scary.
It can, especially if investors are worried about whether the company can repay it.
But didn't they say something about, aggressively paying down that debt?
They did, and they have been. That debt is down to $369 million already, and they're committed to reducing it even further.
Okay, so that perception of being, over-leveraged, it's fading.
It's starting to, yes.
Okay, so that's one reason. What's the second?
All right, reason number 2 is a little more complicated.
Hit me with it.
It involves Orion Mine Finance, a private equity fund that was Sandstorm's biggest shareholder for a while.
I've heard of them.
Well, they've been selling off their shares. And some investors are worried they're going to suddenly dump a huge chunk of their holdings, which would drive the price down.
The classic fear of a big sell-off.
Exactly.
Is that a real concern, though?
Well, the CEO is quick to point out that Orion has already sold enough to be below 10% ownership.
Yeah.
And there are rules that prevent big shareholders from selling off too much too quickly. So a massive fire sale is unlikely.
Okay, good to know. 2 reasons down, 2 to go. What's the third reason?
The third reason is a common one. The fear of future equity offerings.
Ah, I see.
Investors worry that Sandstorm will issue more shares to raise capital.
And that dilutes the value of existing shares.
Exactly. Nobody wants their piece of the pie to get smaller.
Right, makes sense. But didn't the CEO say something about not needing to issue more shares?
He did. He was very clear about that. He emphasized that their growth strategy is all about mergers, acquisitions, or organic growth, all funded by their own cash flow.
So no need to dilute shares.
He was adamant about that.
Interesting. Okay, so that's 3 reasons. What's the 4th and final reason for this so-called undervaluation?
Well, it's something we've already touched on. Those massive development projects. A lack of understanding around them.
Ah, I see.
The CEO knows that these projects aren't as well known as they could be, and that uncertainty about their timelines is impacting the valuation.
Yeah, it's hard to get excited about something you don't fully understand.
Right. But it sounds like they're trying to address that by being more transparent about the project's progress.
More transparency is always good.
It is, and hopefully that will boost investor confidence.
Okay, so bottom line, is Sandstorm a good investment or not? What's the verdict?
Well, I can't give financial advice.
Of course.
But it does seem like Sandstorm is making a pretty strong case.
Yeah.
They've got a plan to tackle their debt. They're strategically buying back shares. And those development projects, well, they have the potential to be game changers.
Okay, so they're ticking a lot of boxes. All right, we've talked about gold prices, those huge development projects, and the reasons behind their current valuation. What else did the CEO talk about in that investor presentation?
Well, he also went into quite a bit of detail about their capital allocation plans.
You mean how they plan to use their money?
Exactly.
Did he mention anything about, delicious snacks for the office or the ping pong table?
Not quite.
Too bad. So what did he say?
The message was clear. Debt repayment is their top priority.
Which makes sense, right? given all that talk about legacy debt perception.
Absolutely. They need to show investors they're serious about getting their finances in order.
But wait, didn't we see something in the earnings call about debt repayment slowing down in Q3? What was that all about?
You're right, it did slow down a bit, but the CEO explained that it was because of some timing issues with working capital and some share buybacks.
Ah, so just a temporary thing.
Yeah, just a blip. He assured investors it was temporary.
So they're still committed to that aggressive debt repayment plan.
Absolutely. They've already repaid $10 million in the first 5 weeks of Q4, and the CEO projected that debt reduction would speed up to almost $30 million per quarter by Q1 2025.
Wow, so they're putting their money where their mouth is?
They are.
They're tackling their debt, they're buying back shares, and they've got these potentially massive development projects in the pipeline.
Yep, it's starting to look like they might be undervalued.
I'm starting to think so too, but I'm still curious about something.
What's that?
Well, they keep mentioning that over 85% of their production will be precious metals once those big projects are online.
Right.
What about the other 15%? What else are they producing besides gold?
That's a great question. They do have a few other metals in their portfolio, and one of them is particularly interesting.
Ooh, tell me more. What is it?
Uranium.
Uranium. Wait, like nuclear reactor uranium.
Exactly.
Hold on, I need to recalculate my potential investment numbers here.
It's not just a small thing for them either. Sandstorm has a pretty significant stake in the uranium market, royalties on some major mines.
Okay, this is getting interesting. Tell me more. Which mines? How much uranium are we talking about?
Well, their main uranium asset is a royalty on the Langer Heinrich mine in Namibia. It's one of the world's largest open-pit uranium mines.
Wow.
And Sandstorm gets a cut of, well, every pound of uranium they produce.
That's amazing. And didn't I see something about uranium prices starting to go up?
You did. There's definitely a feeling in the market that uranium's ready for a comeback.
So Sandstorm's sitting on a potential gold mine and a potential uranium mine. What's the catch? It's got to be a catch.
Well, like with any investment, there are always risks. Uranium prices, they can be volatile, and there are, the regulatory and environmental concerns that come with nuclear power.
True. But getting back to the investor presentation, did the CEO even talk about this uranium angle? Was he as excited about it as he was about those gold projects? Yeah.
He mentioned it, but it wasn't really the main focus. He highlighted the uranium royalty as a valuable asset, but he spent most of his time talking about those gold projects, the growth potential there.
Interesting. Do you think he's downplaying the uranium on purpose?
Yeah.
Maybe try to keep expectations in check?
It's possible. It could be strategic, avoid getting investors too excited about something that's, well, it's still kind of speculative.
Right.
Or maybe he's just really focused on getting those gold projects going, and he sees the uranium as just a bonus.
Okay, so maybe playing it cool on the uranium front. But I'm still really interested in it. It's like this whole other layer of potential upside for Sandstorm.
It's definitely worth keeping an eye on, especially with what's happening in the energy market.
For sure. Okay, let's shift gears for a second and talk about something else the CEO brought up in the presentation. Their commitment to, sustainability. Did anything about that jump out at you?
Yeah, actually, I was impressed by their approach. It's not just about, checking boxes and putting out a standard sustainability report. They're actually taking steps to reduce their environmental impact and improve their social responsibility.
Okay, so what are they actually doing? Give me some examples.
Well, they're putting in place stricter environmental standards for their streaming and royalty agreements. They're pushing the mining companies they work with to adopt more sustainable practices.
So they're using their influence to promote positive change. I like that.
Yeah, it's good to see. And they're investing in renewable energy projects to offset their carbon footprint. And they've started some community development initiatives in the areas where they operate.
That's fantastic. It's really nice to see a company in, the mining space taking sustainability seriously.
It's not just about profits. It's about making a positive impact.
Exactly. And you know what? It's not just good for the planet. It's good for business, too.
Mm-hmm.
Investors are looking for companies with strong, what are they called? ESG credentials.
ESG, yeah. Environmental, social, and governance. It's a big deal these days.
It is. Okay, so Sandstorm is tackling their debt. They've got those potentially huge gold projects, a growing uranium royalty, and they're committed to sustainability. What's not to like?
Well, like we talked about before, there are always risks. Mining is a cyclical industry. Commodity prices go up and down. And those big development projects, things could go wrong. Timelines could slip. Costs could go up.
Right, of course. But overall, it seems like the CEO painted a pretty good picture of Sandstorm's future, in that investor presentation.
He did.
Did anything in the earnings call contradict what he said?
Not really. The earnings call was more about, the most recent quarter. But there weren't any red flags or anything that contradicted the long-term vision they laid out in the investor presentation.
Okay, so they're saying all the right things, and they seem to be doing the right things. What's your gut feeling? Do you think Sandstorm is a good investment?
Well, I'm not a financial advisor, so I always recommend, doing your own research before making any investment decisions. But
You're going to leave me hanging with a butt.
But if I was looking for a company with, exposure to precious metals, a potential uranium play, and a strong commitment to sustainability, Sandstorm would definitely be on my radar.
Okay, I'm sold. I'm going to do some more digging, see if they pass my sniff test. But before we wrap this up, there's one more thing I'm curious about.
What's that?
They mentioned a couple of times that they're open to mergers and acquisitions, buying other companies or being bought themselves.
Right.
Do you think they're more likely to be the buyer or the one being bought?
That's a great question. And I'm sure a lot of investors are wondering the same thing. Let's unpack that a bit. So are they out there hunting for companies to buy? Or are they, kind of putting themselves up for sale? What do you think?
It's a good question, right? It's hard to say for sure. But I mean, just based on where they are now and what their CEO's been saying, I kind of think they're more likely to be the buyer, at least in the near future.
Okay, why do you think that?
Well, for one thing, they're in a really strong financial position right now.
Yeah, they're making a lot of cash.
They are. And remember, they're aggressively paying down that debt.
Right.
So that gives them, a lot of flexibility. They can make strategic acquisitions if the right opportunity pops up.
So they've got the resources to make a move.
They do.
Huh?
And their CEO has said, multiple times, that they're looking to add, high quality, long life assets.
Yeah, he's been pretty clear about that.
Yeah, and they're very specific about what they're looking for. Projects with low operating costs, strong jurisdictions.
And lots of gold.
Lots of gold, of course. So they're not just, buying anything. They're being picky.
They're looking for the best of the best.
But wouldn't it make more sense for them to just be acquired themselves? I mean, they're pretty small compared to the big mining giants, right?
Yeah, that's a fair point, and it's definitely possible.
Right.
But I think their CEO, he sees Sandstorm as more of a consolidator. They're the ones doing the acquiring.
He wants to build an empire.
Exactly. He doesn't want to be swallowed up by a bigger fish.
Okay, so big ambitions. But wouldn't being acquired by, a bigger company, would that be good for shareholders? They'd probably get a nice premium on their shares.
True. That's always a possibility.
Right.
But the CEO, he's convinced that they can create more value for shareholders by staying independent, by growing their portfolio. He thinks they're undervalued, and he wants to prove it.
That's a bold move.
It is. High risk, high reward.
Exactly. So if they can actually pull it off, the investors who get in early, they could do really well.
Yeah, it's all about potential. And Sandstorm has a lot of it.
They do. Okay, so we've talked about them as the acquirer.
Yeah.
But what if someone comes knocking with a really good offer? Would they consider being acquired?
Well, the CEO said they're always open to considering offers, if it's in the best interest of the shareholders.
Makes sense.
But he's also said they're not, actively looking to be bought.
So they're not for sale, but they're not saying no to anything either.
Exactly. They're in a good position, and they're playing it smart.
I like it. Okay, let's zoom out for a second. Look at the big picture. We've talked about, gold prices, development projects, uranium, sustainability, mergers and acquisitions. What's your overall impression of Sandstorm Gold? The key takeaways from our deep dive.
Well, I think Sandstorm is a really interesting company at a crucial point in their journey. They're in a great spot to benefit from this gold bull market. They've got those potentially game-changing development projects in the works, a growing uranium royalty that could become even more valuable, and they're committed to sustainability. That's a big deal.
Sounds like you're doing a lot of things right.
They are, but of course there are always risks.
Of course. There's no such thing as a sure thing.
Right. Like we said before, the mining industry, it goes up and down. Commodity prices can be volatile. There's no guarantee that gold prices will stay high. And uranium prices are they're even harder to predict.
Okay, so those are the external risks. Anything internal? Any red flags about the company itself?
Well, their debt level is something to watch, even though they are paying it down quickly. And those big projects, there's always a risk that, things could go wrong, timelines could slip, Costs could go up.
Yeah, those are all good points. But overall, it sounds like you're, cautiously optimistic.
I am, yeah. They've got a good management team, a solid plan, and their assets have a lot of potential. But potential doesn't always, translate into results.
Very true. So for our listeners who are, thinking about maybe adding Sandstorm Gold to their portfolio, what's the one piece of advice you would give them?
I would say, do your homework. Really understand the risks, and don't invest more than you can afford to lose. And, of course, stay tuned to the deep dive for more updates on Sandstorm Gold and other, interesting companies out there.
Great advice. And a shameless plug for the show. I love it. All right, that about wraps up our deep dive into the world of Sandstorm Gold. It's been a fascinating journey. Any final thoughts before we sign off?
Just one. It's going to be really interesting to see what happens with Sandstorm over the next few years. Will they become, a major player? Or will they get acquired? Only time will tell, but it's definitely a story worth following.
I agree. I'm going to be watching closely. Thanks for joining me on this deep dive. It's been great exploring Sandstorm Gold with you.
Thanks for having me.
And to all our listeners out there, thanks for tuning in. Until next time, keep learning, keep exploring, and keep diving deep.
Secure the future from the unknown. This Sandstorm's full of gold. Secure the future from the unknown. This Sandstorm's full of gold. Secure the future from the